Well, as you guys know, anyone arriving in Hong Kong is bombarded with a sensory overload, an indescribable sensory overload. So I think probably my first real memory of arriving in Hong Kong and living temporarily in a hotel in Causeway Bay was the smell and the multitude of smells. So we being my mum, dad and myself moved to Hong Kong in January 1979, and that was purely because dad took a job there. He was a building surveyor and he took a job with the Hong Kong government, and 2.5 years became 5, became 7.5, became 18 years for them, and nearly 44 years for me. So we spent 3 months in the Lee Gardens Hotel, which is now the shopping mall. I think the Manulife building in Causeway Bay, you probably know that. And then we got our first apartment, which was in Baguio Villas in Pok Fullam. For a lot of us, Kowloon felt like the dark side. I think, Hong Kong felt more cosmopolitan, more international, and obviously a big part of my activity, school, home, friends, was Hong Kong Island. However, playing sport and various other things, we'd go over to Kowloon, very regularly, as anyone living in Hong Kong does. I remember having a rubber dinghy as a kid. So where we lived in Baguio Villas, down at the bottom was Telegraph Bay, that's now all reclaimed, and it's where Cyberport is, right? So it's Cyberport's another mile out into the sea in typical Hong Kong fashion. But back in the early 80s, we'd go down there with the rubber dinghy and mess around and row out into the Lama Channel and see how far we could get out before the big ships would be looming too big on the horizon. So I think there was a lot of freedom to growing up in Hong Kong. I think you grow up quickly there, you met people from all different sort of walks of life. It was very international. You were exposed to a lot more stuff than I would have been in my village in UK if I'd stayed here, growing up here. I've forgotten what the original question was now.
My name is Richard Cook. I work in media. I grew up in London and I left London to go to Hong Kong when I was in my early 20s. I thought I would only go for a few weeks. I was going travelling, and actually I stayed for 26 years in Hong Kong. When I first knew him, I knew him through guys that I worked with, and there was a kind of gang of us. And Martin was, and I was on the fringe of that gang, if you say, and then Martin was kind of on the other end of the gang, but on the fringe, and that's how we first met. That's how so we knew each other, and I'm not sure we particularly liked each other, first of all. Maybe we were kind of a bit compared, but we were young guys, we were sort of in our 20s, and we were very different then. Martin grew up there. Martin went there as a kid. He went from the UK, so he very much, Hong Kong was home for him. And if you went with him, say you went to walk between a few bars saying one chai, it was a bit like being with a celebrity, because he knew everybody. He might know a doorman, he might know a guy in a suit, he might know a guy in short. He knew everybody. And Martin is like, whoa, it's funny really, funny, but very Martin. First work he did, which is the overviews of Hong Kong, I was really taken with. I love it, and actually we own some. Of the overhead of the container port of Poyo Beach, which is where we lived. It's very clever because it's very unusual, but at the same time it really does capture Hong Kong. It's very, very clever, but the work he's doing now, which is more UK based and more about where they're living in North Yorkshire and the countryside, is also beautiful.
I mean, long story short, you go back to when I went to university, I wasn't really aware of the creative industries. I didn't get any real career counselling at school, and you know, all the design disciplines, architecture, fine art, graphics, etc., etc. Just wasn't really aware when I left school. And the path was go and study something you were good at A-level and liked, you know. So I did history, which is completely useless unless you want to be a history teacher, which I didn't. And then sort of fell into nightclub management and promoting events, and fell into then the advertising world, became aware of advertising. So I was very lucky to fall into that and loved my time in advertising, which is a creative discipline, or the creative side of it is, for sure, but it's commercial creativity, and there's an inherent frustration as a creative that you can't keep it as pure as you want to. And I guess subconsciously I'd been looking for an outlet as a therapy to that, and I'd been threatening to paint for a while, and my wife bought me my easel, which is still the same easel, so I've had that I guess getting on 30 years now, and it coincided with my mum passing away. So she died a week before my birthday when I got the easel, and I found myself just literally throwing paint on a canvas, and there was a whole new therapy, I guess, that whole mourning process. And in doing that, I found a subject and self-developed a style, and that first subject was sort of street characters of Hong Kong. And the next step was developing that into a collection, so that became my first collection, and then people bought my work, which was really surreal. So I guess I was capturing Hong Kong in a fresh way, which has become my philosophy for all my art, is to, you know, celebrate the world around us, but hopefully through a fresh lens, and not to create stuff that people have seen before. So that was the first step, and for many years I continued to paint while working full-time in advertising. So it was, you know, it was my time. Nobody, when you're in front of a canvas on an easel, nobody tells you what to do, you know. So it was full creative control. If it went wrong, it was my fault. If it went right, it was all my decision. So it became a big part of my life, and I think it helped my day job as well, because there was less frustration knowing that you had this other outlet for your creativity at the same time. So this very much starts with the process I was alluding to earlier, where I'm covering the canvas in a medium moulding paste, and then sort of etching in my layout with a chopstick, but then painting the whole thing white. And then the first process is pouring. So it's pouring inks and acrylics and bleeding them together and then letting them dry. So I'll just give you a little demo of part of this process. Get a bit more water in there. Right, so basically, as I said, this is very much the starting point of colouring one of these pieces. I'm just starting to pour in a way that takes my fancy. And then so what I really love about this kind of process is how just organic and random the first few layers are, and the painting, you know, when you're painting a picture, so to speak, you know, it can be a very disciplined, rigid process. You've got that picture in your head and you are like one of the characters. It's got to be Bart Simpson. Whereas more fine art, you know, the painting paints itself to a degree. But a bit of water, a bit of spirit works well here. So we've got a fair bit of goo there, haven't we? And I'll probably, you know, keep doing this until I'm sort of happy with the way the colours are working together, what's exposed, what isn't exposed. And, you know, ironically, once the final piece is done, you might not see a lot of this background colour, but you know it's there, if that makes any sense. But there'll be hints of it. So it's very much an evolved and involved kind of way of creating anything. Right, and that would be it. I would basically just leave that. Maybe as it starts to dry, you can start to come and move sections around a little bit with a brush, shape it, whatever, and then just let that do its thing. So until that's dry, I won't quite know what comes next. You know, a lot of artists are known for one thing and one thing only and one technique. I think that's a little too limiting in life. I want to explore all different, I'll be in different moods. I want to do something really free form, and I want to do something really disciplined and tight and detailed. So I'm able to move from one mood to another as it strikes me. So there you go. Having left Hong Kong for a perfect storm of reasons, COVID, being separated from our daughter who was at university, my dad getting older, and the fairly regrettable decline of certain freedoms in Hong Kong, the political situation. You know, I grew up in a Hong Kong where free expression, creative expression was embraced and encouraged, and to see a lot of the kids that I employed over the years slowly start to have these freedoms taken away from them started to make me very sad and very angry. You know, we made a lot of good friends over the years, some of whom have left Hong Kong, some of whom are still in Hong Kong. I think I love the spirit of Hong Kong Chinese, and we got lots of very good Hong Kong Chinese friends. Some are still there, some have left to go to UK, Canada, Australia, elsewhere. Yeah, I think just people, the kind of people that we were surrounded by in Hong Kong, I probably miss more than anything physical about the place.
He's a Hong Kong guy, you know, and I think there's now a phrase, Hong Kong British, right? And I kind of became Hong Kong British, but I was always from here, and I'm a London boy, and London will always be home, right? Martin, out of everyone I knew that were foreigners, Guilo, he was 150% Hong Kong, more than anyone else I knew, for sure.
For a long time I'd held the dream of just painting, and we got ourselves in a position where we could find a new home, and our home is our business, and built this studio. So really my plan is just to keep creating. As an artist, you're constantly searching for that holy grail, you know, that one idea that you think is suddenly going to elevate you to a different level. Whether you find it or not, who knows, but that's I think it's the same about any creative person, constantly striving to find something new. So the plan is really just to hopefully build up the awareness of my art in the UK. I'll continue to work on some Hong Kong projects as well. I still create Hong Kong inspired art. I've obviously got collectors in various parts of the world who still have that Hong Kong connection too, even though I'm not there. And enjoy, hopefully, our new life in UK for a long time to come, touch wood.